Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Colette Watson, and this is Free Press Live, your weekly source for updates and live discussion of what's happening in the world of communications rights. Learn more about our work at freepress.net. If you're tuning in today, let us know in the comments where you are and what you're interested in. Today, we're talking about disinformation. What is it? Why is it? And who is being affected? On last Thursday, Surgeon General Vivek Murthy released a new report confirming the health threats of online misinformation, which has led people to refuse COVID-19 vaccines, reject masks and other public health measures, and use unproven treatments. Data cited in the Surgeon General's report shows that even brief exposure to COVID-19 misinformation has made people less likely to seek out a vaccine. So misinformation, we know, is when wrong information gets shared. But disinformation, the intentional sharing of that wrong information, how has that impacted our communities during this pandemic and beyond? We're going to talk about it today with an amazing organization based out of New Mexico called Generation Justice. And we'll talk about what's new in the world of communications and human rights. So make sure that you stay tuned. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and we'll be right back with the headlines. Welcome to Free Press Live. Welcome back to Free Press Live. In today's news, according to Bloomberg.com, the Federal Communications Commission is challenging a bid by Elon Musk's SpaceX for $886 million in rural broadband subsidies, saying some of the money appeared headed for serving parking lots and airports with satellite-delivered broadband. Now, this funding came under heavy scrutiny after our organization, Free Press, published a 6-part investigation, including exposés of several questionable applicants, SpaceX included, that sought to bring connectivity to unoccupied parking lots, storage tanks, and traffic islands, as well as urban areas that other providers already served. In a press statement, Acting FCC Chairwoman Jessica Rosenworcel said that the agency is refocusing the program on unserved areas and putting winning bidders on notice of their obligation to ensure that support goes to the areas that need it. And certainly coming through the COVID-19 digital divide we're all experiencing, we do hope that the FCC's broadband funding does go to where it is actually needed. So moving on Monday, Common Cause and over 20 additional nonpartisan organizations sent a letter to Mark Zuckerberg demanding that Facebook close a loophole that has allowed the Team Trump page, operated by Trump's Save America Political Action Committee, to continue running political ads on Facebook, despite the current 2-year ban on the former president's Facebook and Instagram accounts. Facebook says that the groups affiliated with the former president are not barred from posting on Facebook, so long as they're not posting in his quote-unquote voice. In a statement from Yosef Getachew, the director of media and democracy at Common Cause, quote, "If Facebook's content moderation policies for public figures are to have any legitimacy, they must not be so easily circumvented. We urge Facebook to close this loophole and align its content moderation policies with campaign finance law to prevent politicians from using political committees under their control to evade enforcement actions." And finally, last week, we shared the reporting that internet service providers like Comcast and AT&T spent $234 million on lobbying the US Congress just in its last session. $234 billion. That's incredible. At the same time, PhillyVoice.com reported that President Biden nominated longtime Comcast executive David L. Cohen as his next ambassador to Canada. So for this week, we'd like to invite you to participate with a poll question. We're asking, are you concerned about the influence of big ISPs on our federal government. You can chime in via the comments or on Twitter. And if you're tweeting, please be sure to use the hashtag FreePressLive. Again, we want to know whether you're concerned about the influence of corporate ISPs on our federal government, whether that be our members of Congress, our president himself, the judicial branch, or what have you. What do you think about the influence of Comcast and AT&T and some of these other large internet service providers, particularly at a time where we are sorting through a lack of broadband availability when the entire nation has to be online as a matter of public health? So moving to today's topic, I'm really excited to talk about disinformation and what it means in our communities with a very inspiring organization based in New Mexico called Generation Justice. Generation Justice is a multiracial, multicultural project that trains youth to harness the power of community and raise critical consciousness through leadership development, civic engagement, media production, and narrative shift. So this summer, interns at Generation Justice researched a critical topic, disinformation, and they're here along with director and founder Roberta Rael, who I'd like to invite on screen right now. And they're going to tell us about just what they uncovered. Roberta, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure. Welcome to Free Press Live.
Thank you so much, Colette, and to Free Press for inviting us to share a little bit about our work in general and especially this summer. So thank you.
Yeah, and I want to take this opportunity to ask you, Roberta, and your amazing interns to introduce yourself to folks. Let us know your name and where you're joining us from here today.
I'm going to have the young people introduce themselves, and we'll start with Jamal. If you would start us off, please, and then we'll go to Saviana, and then we'll go to Jackie.
Hello, my name is Jamal Sanchez. I am 17 years old. My pronouns are he, him, his. This is my first month with GJs. I am brand new. I will be a senior at Cleveland High School this coming fall, and I identify as Native American and Black.
Hello, my name is Saviana Moya. I'm 13 years old. I'm going to be an 8th grader at Albuquerque Academy. I identify as Chicana, and I've been with Generation Justice for about a year in October.
Hi, my name is Jacqueline Wynn. I'm 16 years old. My pronouns are she, hers. I identify as Vietnamese American. And I'm going to be a junior at St. Pius X High School. I'm really glad to be here today.
We are so glad to have you here today, all four of you. It is incredible to know that you are doing such important work at such young ages. I can guarantee you that when I was your age, I was not quite as astute as you are. So thank you for what you're doing at Generation Justice. And thank you, Roberta Rael, for making it all possible. If we could, I'd like to go to you to start. Could you tell us about Generation Justice and why you think it's important for young people to harness the power of media and critical consciousness?
Thank you. Generation Justice is a 16-year-old project now. The same age as Jackie and a little bit older than Saviana. And we have been working both locally and nationally to uplift the voices of young people and to give young people the training that we need in New Mexico for leadership, both present and future leadership. And that does include really a combination of learning to have critical thinking skills, often which are not taught in schools, learning about history, learning about the world that we live in and trying to make sense of it. And through that, we also have an hour-long radio broadcast that we do every Sunday night that the young people produce. And in the summers and throughout the year, we have a lot of pedagogy training for the young people to participate in and to learn and grow. We operate off of core values that the young people put together for our project many years ago. And in those core values, That includes, of course, youth empowerment, community action, the importance of living in a multiracial, multicultural world and learning how to do that really well and consciously, but also the core value of love. And that the work that we do is really based in love and love for our community and love for ourselves and learning how to love ourselves even more.
Amazing work. Thank you, Roberta, for everything that you're doing in New Mexico. Truly, I think that being able to love ourselves is very much impacted by having a media system that reflects the fullness of our lives and who we are. And I'm guessing that probably your students share that belief with me because they've joined Generation Justice. So if I could start with you, Jamel, why did you decide to join Generation Justice? What does it mean to you?
Well, the reason why I joined Generation Justice is I wanted to have another platform where my voice can be heard. When my whole life I've been told to be quiet, not to mention anything of what we learn here today. And also because Generation Justice loves you for who you are and not what your skin looks like or what your tradition is. We always give love and support to one another. And to those who might be interested in joining Generation Justice, do it. It's a great experience with great people. I learned more into the events of what happened in history, and we also get to go on live radio, which is my favorite part. We have learned about, like as Roberta said, the giants who normally we don't learn about in school. For example, sorry, I don't remember. Basically, we learn a lot about giants that we learn in school. We learn more in depth of it. This is why I joined Generation Justice.
I love it. I love to hear it. Saviana, why did you join Generation Justice, and what does it mean to you?
Well, I have a passion for social justice. So, like, as soon as I turned 13, I wanted to join Generation Justice because I wanted to kind of take my activism to another level and actually do anti-racism work. And anyone who wants to join Generation Justice, I would say just do it. There's so many great learning experiences. It, like Jamel said, it's such a loving and supporting space. It's just like a great experience, and I'm so happy to be a part of it.
That's amazing. And of course, I want to ask you, Jacqueline, what motivated you to join Generation Justice, and what do you have to say to folks looking to do something similar?
So my brother was already involved in Generation Justice, and I felt like I like went with him to one of the meetings, and I felt like in Generation Justice, I've never been in such a loving and open community that just cares for youth and has this drive to um, support youth development and youth leadership. And I feel like if anyone wanted to join Generation Justice, that it's an amazing community, and it's to me, it's like a second family, and so it's something you want to honor.
Amazing. Thank you, Jacqueline. And I'll actually stay with the young people here for a moment to ask you a little bit about how you've been spending your summer with Generation Justice. So this summer you studied disinformation as a part of your media justice internship. What is disinformation and what did you learn? I'll start again with you, Jamel.
Well, my definition of disinformation is spreading harmful, false information on purpose to anyone on the internet or by gossiping is usually talk how I usually word disinformation. Um, well, it can negatively affect someone even like right now with disinformation, it can negatively affect people in the health field.
Absolutely, it can. I think we've seen some harassment of folks who are on the, so-called front lines of that issue, and it's incredible to think that there are folks who would harass people putting their lives on the line to help support our community health. Thank you for that, Jamel. Saviana, what is disinformation to you, and what have you learned about this summer?
So like Jamel said, it's like someone spreading harmful disinformation on purpose and they know it's not true. So more specifically, I studied like the disinformation around critical race theory. And what that's about is people, they're just kind of afraid of history and they don't want it to be taught to kids. And so disinformation, I think, is very, very important to learn about. And I'm so grateful to have learned about it through this summer.
I'm so grateful that you've learned about it this summer too. Thank you, Saviana. Jacqueline, what is disinformation to you, and what have you learned this summer?
So for disinformation, because my group like studied like kind of the broader like umbrella topic, like the whole overall, we learned that disinformation is information, like Jamel said, that is deliberately used to harm. Sometimes it's used to like uh, attack a group or a community, and it's used for kind of a political gain. I think something that I really learned while studying disinformation was racialized disinformation, and that's like disinformation campaigns that would polarize or kind of that aren't of a certain ethnic group, and they would like kind of attack that group, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that is such a critical part of the disinformation conversation. I think when we talk about disinformation, conspiracism, so much of it is racialized and gendered, in very obvious and sometimes subtle ways that can make it seem as though, oh, well, someone's just talking about QAnon, or someone's just talking about the vaccine, and protecting their version of freedom. But what they're really doing is saying that, they oftentimes are dehumanizing the folks who are disproportionately impacted when you're talking about COVID, or in the case of QAnon, we see so much racist and hateful language that is spread along with those types of conspiracist misinformation. So I'm so glad that you studied that. And I do want to circle back to Jamel for just a moment to talk about some of the things that you got to do this summer, including, I believe, a study group. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So my study group did the disinformation on mask myths and vaccine myths, along with the Delta variant. So we just disproved the false allegations with the vaccine. And for masks, like for example, in athletics or just masks in general, and the vaccine portion, for example, like that it was rushed. We debunked that and researched as to proving that the allegations were wrong in that portion of our research.
Fantastic. Well, that sounds like an amazing study group and just an incredible summer project overall. If I may come back to you, Roberta, I want to ask you, what is it that motivated you to put together Generation Justice? What is the power of narrative shift, particularly there in New Mexico? And just hats off to you. I mean, everyone watching, please jump into the comments with love for Roberta Rael and this amazing Generation Justice family.
Thanks, Colette. So Generation Justice was started actually as part of the KUNM Youth Radio Project, or it was the KUNM Youth Radio Project, and I was asked to help implement it. for many reasons, I was able to design it as a social justice project. And a few years later, 4 years later, we spun away from the radio station with a great partnership with the radio station. But we spun away and became a community-based organization. The young people rebranded the name of Generation Justice. They designed our logo, which is a fist in blue, and they came up with a process to develop our core values that we stand upon every day. The reason that I founded this project in the way that I founded and designed it is because I'm a Novo Mexicana Chicana, and I have been combating racism and oppression in a variety of ways my entire life. And it's important that our young people have the tools available to them, including the tool of love, to be able to live in this world and do well in this world for themselves and for their families and for their ancestors. And so we have done a number of things through the 16 years. This summer, I want to focus a little bit more on disinformation. We have been working in media literacy the entire time of the 16 years of Generation Justice. And narrative shift is a part of media literacy, I believe. And when we have young people who know what they're talking about and speak from the heart and just allow themselves to be open through our radio broadcast, for example, or through trainings that they conduct with other community members, that is a narrative shift from the misinformation and disinformation about young people that has perpetuated from time immemorial, that young people, and particular BIPOC young people, do not know what they're talking about. They're apathetic, they're destructive, they're terrorists, they're all those things that there are stereotypes about young people, and particularly, again, BIPOC youth. And so when we turn that around by showcasing the brilliance and the beauty and the love that young people have for community and each other, that shifts the narrative about how we need to be leaning in to young people to help lead today as well as in our future. Disinformation, as we know, has been incredibly harmful. And we have been subjected to disinformation also from time immemorial. And so that is not a new battle for us. And focusing, training young people on disinformation, and I want to give props to the Disinformation Defense League, Dr. Joan Donovan and her whole amazing crew there, as well as Media Justice, who we're also deeply connected with, that helped us get information that we needed at a time when we were very vulnerable at Generation Justice, but also being able to have research at this very high level to share with the young people and have them study and learn about the disinformation in terms of masks, myths, and COVID and the vaccine, as Jamal was talking about, learning about disinformation in general and learning about disinformation around the controversy of critical race theory and how all of that disinformation continues to try to keep us oppressed, keep us separated and isolated from each other and not trusting one another. And it is really important that we debunk disinformation, that we continue to work against it, because disinformation is the media literacy that needs to happen in our country today. And who better to teach that about that than young people? And so we were delighted that this summer we really were able to focus on training about disinformation.
I'm delighted too, Roberta, and so grateful to you for this incredible vision that you've brought to life over the years in the form of Generation Justice. What made you, well, you shared what kind of made you want to talk about disinformation this summer. So I'll ask you this way. How does disinformation uniquely impact communities, Black and Indigenous and other communities of color? What would you say to that question? And of course, if anyone else here on our esteemed panel wants to chime in, you certainly can. But I'll start with you, Roberta.
It hurts us every day. Mm-hmm. I mean, whether we're talking about the disinformation around the public health issue of this global deadly pandemic that we are still in, we have had people die. We have had innocent people who didn't need to die die in this past 16 months. So it has hurt us. In New Mexico, the indigenous communities that have been greatly impacted by COVID, we have lost elders who hold the truth of their history, who hold the truth of the beautiful languages that need to be held. We have lost family stories. We've lost a lot with regard to that disinformation has impacted. Had we not had the disinformation at the beginning of the pandemic, I feel like we wouldn't have lost all of that, as well as the loved ones. We've disinformation right now targeting critical race theory and anti-racism work. The work that we do at Generation Justice is a threat to organizations, but more importantly, it's a threat to these young people who have the right to learn about their history, to learn the true history of this land, this stolen indigenous land that we stand upon. And for New Mexico and Albuquerque, where we're at, especially, this is Tiwa land. We have to teach young people this truth because they're not getting it in their schools. Again, disinformation and misinformation has been used against us since time immemorial. And so young people should have the right to learn all about their history. And I think that, it really, Colette, it is about our survival. It's our survival. And it isn't something frivolous, and it isn't something that it's just a fad that's going to go away, or it's just a couple of dangerous networks that continue to do this. It has impacted loved ones that we know who decided not to get the vaccine. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's impacted the fact that, young people can't go out and openly talk sometimes about what they're doing because they're going to get called Antifa. It's affected so many layers, and it's one of the reasons I think that organizations like Generation Justice are important to support. But we have to keep on combating this, and we have to keep on finding the courage to speak up against these lies and these networks and these billionaires who are funding the lies that continue to be aired, that continue to be put on the platforms that are unregulated, like Facebook. We have to keep binding ourselves together with each other. And this is what I think is core to the movement, and the movement is core to our survival.
Indeed it is, Roberta. Thank you for that. I think I was particularly glad to hear that Generation Justice is taking on the topic of disinformation as a part of your ongoing work, but as your focus this summer, because I've noticed, and I think probably our folks watching here, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube watching Free Press Live, have probably also noticed that there has been definite leveraging of histories of government interference in our public health as folks of color, or even withholding of care, or just other institutional oppression. There have been folks playing upon that to sow seeds of distrust in the medical establishment, and then the idea of vaccination, even in the idea of critical race theory, as though it is somehow a sort of government conspiracy, which I'm pretty sure Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw and others would disagree with that characterization. But there are folks who are playing upon our rightful, our rightful distrust of these institutions to actually turn that into disinformation, to convince our folks to not be vaccinated, and to ultimately fall victim, as you described, Roberta, to this pandemic. So I was really glad to hear you're taking that on, and particularly Jacqueline, you mentioned earlier that you're looking into the racialized aspects of disinformation. So I want to start with you, Jacqueline, and then go back around to everyone. How are you presenting your findings from this summer's work, which I am so excited to see, and I'm sure the folks tuning in are too. How are you going to present your findings, Jacqueline?
So actually right now we're kind of just recording the presentations, and we're planning to put them on radio, but also we're going to post them on YouTube.
That sounds great. Well, we'll be looking out for that. There are some folks tuning in right now to this show on YouTube. So go ahead and slide over to Generation Justice and hit that subscribe button while you're here to make sure that you see those findings. Saviana or Jamel, is there anything that you want to add just about the findings or about how this research this summer has affected you and what you'll be taking with you as you head forward into your lives from here? Kind of what has the impact of this disinformation study been on you?
And if I can just jump in really quickly for the three of you, I just want to encourage you, just speak from your heart about your experience, and whether it's about disinformation or just any of the experience. I just want to invite you to just bring in your hearts and share from there.
Well, with the research that we've done, how it impacted me is that it really opened my eyes as to what people assume or think before knowing the facts, and spreading that rumors and disinformation to everyone, how it rapidly can spread, especially over social media, which really opened my eyes. And like a quote that I have is like, how disinformation, how people spread disinformation is sometimes they spread it without knowing the facts. And the quote that this information really is never judge a book by its cover, which don't assume what you see right away and spread it right away without knowing who they are or what the information is.
That's powerful.
For me, learning about critical race theory, like I didn't really have an idea of I did have an idea of what critical race theory was, but after researching it and just seeing like the lies that have been spread about it and the disinformation that's been spread about it, it's made me want to learn more about it, or just more about kind of disinformation and how it starts and where it spews from, and like why people spread disinformation. But also this summer has just been like a really great experience, and it's my first internship at Generation Justice, and I hope to do many more.
Well, I'm pretty sure Roberta Rael can make that happen, Saviana. So thank you. And thank you all. So, and we're coming up on time. Unfortunately, I could stay here with you all day, but I do just want to ask you, Roberta, to let our viewers know how they can access all of the amazing media that's being created by Generation Justice and support your work. Where can they find you?
And thank you so much for running it on the bottom of your banner here. So generationjustice.org. And when you go to our website, we have all of our podcasts, our radio podcasts. And again, that's where you're going to find some of these disinformation presentations and many more things. And we have a YouTube channel, we have a Facebook page, we have an Instagram that the young people run, and Twitter. And so you can find us on any of those, as well as the radio station in New Mexico, KUNM.org. So thank you to Free Press for always reaching out to us little guys in the world that are just doing a little bit of trying to lay down some good seeds in this world. So I want to thank Free Press for giving us this opportunity, and for the great work that you continue to lead in the country.
Right back to you, Roberta. We are just honored. And Jamel, Saviana, Jacqueline, thank you so much for being here along with Roberta. Of course, we're appreciative for all of you, and not just for you being here, but for what you're doing in the world. You're making a difference, and we couldn't be more proud. So, make sure everyone watching that you check out generationjustice.org. Make sure that you're tuned in to their amazing shows and presentations and subscribed and all that good stuff. And make sure that you subscribe to follow us on Free Press Live, whether that's at youtube.com/freepressaction or just via Free Press on Facebook. We're here every Wednesday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern for just 30 minutes of updates from the intersection of communications rights and human rights. Make sure that you learn more about our work at freepress.net. Free Press doesn't accept any funding from government or corporations. You can help keep our work going by donating now at freepress.net. Thank you again to Generation Justice and to everyone watching. We'll see you here next week at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, Wednesday, for Free Press Live. Have a great evening.